the warming center that has served the greater Middletown community in Orange County for many years. And as you know, due to COVID-19 in the small basement area of St. Paul's, we had the need to relocate, not we, the Greater Middletown Interfaith Council, saw the need to relocate the center for 1 year to protect guests and staff. And this was a move that was promulgated absolutely by COVID-19. Since early August, upon notification of the warming station, I got to get that word correct, I understand, going to Temple Sinai for the winter months, we have been looking for alternatives. Rabbi Rubenstein and Temple Sinai stepped forward during a time of need, and I'm sure the people in the Middletown community and the Greater Middletown Interfaith Council thank them for doing so, although we had a little bit of a rocky road going through the process. Each site has had issues. Each site that we were considering had issues at the time, and many of them back in early August were irreconcilable. The cost of renovation, the fact that some of the properties had existing tenants. We were considering some sites that would have to be relocated to other residential areas that would create similar problems that we were having in the Highland Avenue, Temple Sinai area. They were all a concern to us as we examined other options. In addition, there was a concern as to whether the city should be involved in providing and assisting with programs that are the responsibility of Orange County government and are funded directly through Orange County, and that is the housing of the homeless. The warming center receives minimal, if none, of government money, from what my understanding is. But the fact is whether a city of Middletown size should be involved in that process. All of the options for city involvement required a significant investment and a long-term commitment from city taxpayers. And this is a long-term commitment during COVID, which the city itself is facing extreme financial difficulties. On August 18th, we held a Zoom meeting at City Hall with all the parties, and they updated us on the proposal. That is, the parties being the Greater Middletown Interfaith Council, Rabbi Rubenstein from Temple Sinai, who was also part of the Interfaith Council, Pastor Rusko, the head of the Interfaith Council, Orange County Social Services, I believe, were involved in some of the calls, but there was an involvement by many agencies. We then held a public meeting at City Hall in which GMC laid out their plan that involved a 1-year commitment from the temple. We heard from the neighbors, and they were very vocal in their opposition to locating the facility, not only at this site, but their opposition focused on being located in a residential area. At least some of them did. They were also concerned at the time that the neighborhood had no notice of such move prior to the public meeting. The city advised them that that is a house of worship, that no city approvals were required, and the decision was made by GMIC and not the city. They had major concerns, and rightfully so, and wanted the city to address the concerns. GMIC was also willing to work with the neighbors at the point and did address many of the concerns that the neighbors had and were available to answer all questions. On September 11th, 2020, we received a notice of a second round of CARES Act funding of $250,000. Maria Bruni has put together a plan that would have allowed us to use this money, along with the $100,000 from the previous CARES Act program, to look at an alternate location, which at the time we were discussing was with the Second Baptist Church located on North Street. We had a few follow-up meetings with the Second Baptist pastor, Pastor Perry, and the Greater Middletown Interfaith Council, Pastor Rustico and Rabbi Rubenstein. All involved in the project were interested in having a better quarters or a better plan to address not only the short term, which was the 2020-2021 winter, but also moving forward. As you know, because I let it slip at a previous meeting, we were very hopeful that the warming center would be relocated to the Second Baptist Church on North Street. And as I mentioned, Pastor Perry has been very supportive and also the congregation at Second Baptist was very supportive throughout the process. I retained the services of Joe Fucci, a local architect who has worked with the GMIC in the past, to assist us in doing a survey of that building along with a proposed layout. Myself, Maria Bruni, in consultation with Council President Rodriguez, Alderman Klein and Greener, who are here also with us, and we discussed the potential move to another location, at all points keeping in mind that we needed to have a location for the 2020-2021 winter months. Maria and I also had a follow-up meeting with some of the trustees of the church, along with Pastor Perry, and we presented the plan along with a preliminary design. Our budget for the project, because it was going into raw space, was $350,000 using all of the federal COVID money available. Our last meeting was last Tuesday with Pastor Perry, and that evening he was having a Zoom meeting with his committee. It was determined that the commitment required by the city in HUD, which was 8 years with that because of the $350,000 investment, along with some building issues, complicated our ability to relocate and move the warming center to that location. Although we were hopeful that the Second Baptist site would work, we had continued to work on Plan B, and we were revisiting city sites while considering the Second Baptist location. This was done throughout the process. Now that additional federal funds were available as of September 11th, we had more options. One site that would accommodate the center's needs, or the warming shelter's needs, was the old Mulberry House on Mulberry Street. The problem at this site from the beginning was that outside funds would be needed to again utilize it as a public occupancy building. The premise was rented to a contractor who was doing work in the downtown area as part of the facade program. He has significant equipment stored on site, and he required an area in the downtown vicinity to complete the projects that will probably run through 2021. In addition to rent, the tenant had also performed work on the property as part of his lease, painting and doing other repairs. Since the tenant was a month-to-month tenant at this point, the question arose is, if the tenant's not willing to move, could we evict him if necessary? So we did have that discussion, but we immediately eliminated that because A, it would be the wrong thing for us to do. It would cause them a financial hardship, possibly delay the facade programs, and bottom line, commercial evictions were on hold anyway, and so that option was put to bed. We then examined options to mitigate the impact on the tenant, of the tenant on Mulberry Street for a possible relocation to another facility. In canvassing the area, we identified a property at 25 Mill Street. We had previously had three companies, or three different groups, look at that property, and no sale was taking place because of the condition of the property. We met with Mr. Sanchez, who was the tenant, and presented the need to get into Mulberry House quickly. He was very supportive after we explained to him the need for the project and what we were going to use it for. And we discussed the 25 Mill Street property as compensation for the move, subject to Common Council approval. In addition, as I said, Mr. Sanchez was receptive. He also offered $50,000 in services to the city on a project yet to be determined. He, of course, will be required to repair the property to housing quality standards. The city will use the COVID dollars to fix and convert the Mulberry Street site as a warming center or warming station. We need a minimum 5-year commitment from GMIC. Our proposal and my discussions with Rabbi and Pastor Rustico was it would be a rolling 5 years, that each year we would be renewing. So we always have a 5-year window in case things, at some point, either group would like to get out of the deal. I don't see us doing that, and I don't see them doing that either, but it gives more protection and more stability for the program. The investment at 8-10 Mulberry Street will be less than the Second Baptist conversion because the building is actually in pretty good shape. We have retained Mr. Fucci again, and he will design the interior and do some structural analysis in order to meet the GMIC standards and to ensure Middletown residents that we are not putting people into a substandard building. We have begun the process of getting all utility checked, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and assessments for both short-term and long-term building needs using these COVID funds. Since we will be making a multi-year commitment, we should utilize these funds for building improvements that will allow the GMIC to be in that building long-term without any major commitment from the Middletown city taxpayers, a direct commitment from city taxpayers' dollars. These funds, the purpose is COVID-related, and I don't think of a more COVID-related emergency than what's being proposed. The timeline would allow us to occupy the building, hopefully by the end of the year, and that's subject to the asbestos and lead reviews. In addition, we are required to submit this plan and this amendment to our plan to HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development, the funding federal agency, for their approval. The lead review will take a couple of weeks. Maria has already discussed with the companies that provide that service. HUD will also take a few weeks to review our plan under an emergency condition, and we can move forward from there. HUD also requires a public hearing as part of this amendment to the plan, so we will be scheduling that at the earliest possible time upon proper notice. I'm hopeful that we can make the goal of January 1st. If not, it will not be long after, again assuming that we don't run into any major lead or asbestos findings and possible mitigation that would be required. In the meantime, I will coordinate with Chief Iwanchu to have as much police presence around the temple between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. and upon release of the center occupants, which is around 7 a.m. Tonight, we have a resolution authorizing me to sign a lease with GMIC, along with a contract to transfer 25 Mill Street, and it's placed on tonight's Common Council agenda. And I want to thank the Council President for bypassing the normal protocols and rushing this to the Council floor. I understand that it is a rush, but we need to move quickly to comply with the HUD public hearing guidelines and other administrative responsibilities that Maria has with the use of these funds. We did tour the site with Pastor Rustico, Rabbi Rubenstein, and the architect Joe Fucci, and they believe that the site will work, and I will invite them up to speak for themselves. The location is next door to the St. Paul's site, just right outside the back door of St. Paul's Church, so I anticipate little to none in neighborhood opposition. But we will, of course, still have the public hearing as required. Alderman Green and Kleiner, Maria Bruni, Pastor Rustico, Rabbi Rubenstein, and Pastor Perry have all given their time to get us to this point, and I would like to thank them along with the neighborhood for being so involved in your community. And at this point, I will bring up Pastor Rustico to address some points, and at the end of this process, we will take questions. Let me get my mask on here.
I'm Pastor Rustico, the president of the Greater Middletown Interfaith Council. I first of all want to thank Mayor DeStefano and the City Council and the aldermen for their support. Our sole goal is to provide a place for the least of our brothers and sisters during the winter months so that they can survive, stay alive. We've had 9 wonderful years at St. Paul's Methodist Church, and if it wasn't for COVID, we would be very happy to stay there indefinitely. But because of the cramped space, because we would have up to 30 people sleeping in the basement, cots about 18 inches apart, that's simply not possible. And hopefully a year from now, things will be much better, but we don't anticipate we'll ever be able to go back to having cots 18 inches apart. That is our commitment, and appreciate all the work that's been done to find a place so close, as the mayor said, so close to where we have been for the last 9 years. It was very interesting for us. I'm going to invite the rabbi to come up, my friend and co-leader of the Interfaith Council, to say a few words. But I think the site's going to work just wonderfully. There are going to be areas, in fact, it will be better because there's more space than we have currently at the Methodist Church. Instead of having a divider between the men and women, we're actually going to be able to house them in completely separate areas. We have better bathroom facilities, and we have to sort of figure out where the storage is going to go because we have bedding and supplies that we give out, but I don't see any of those as insurmountable. Before I turn things over, I have to just say two things. One is a thank you to Temple Sinai and Rabbi Rubenstein. I know that their welcome of the warming station was controversial, but without them coming forward, the warming station itself would have been homeless. And for as many weeks as we are still going to be at Temple Sinai, whether it's the first of the year or whether it's sometime in January, we intend to run the excellent program that we run, where you tend to be very good neighbors to the folks on Highland Avenue, and I think that we will win them over when they see the way our guests are treated, and that they are generally very respectful of the program, and they much appreciate it. So, Rabbi, I'm going to say a few things, and then we'll let the mayor come back.
So just quickly, just very grateful to Pastor Rustico, but really just grateful for the mayor for doing this hard work, and our councilmen as well, for doing this hard work to come up with a solution to both house and shelter, the least among us, as Pastor Rustico so beautifully said, and come up with a solution that works for everybody. That's fantastic. I like when everyone's happy. A compromise is great, and this is actually, honestly, much better for the warming station anyway. This is a beautiful place to have it, and just so happy that there's going to be shelter for these guests at our synagogue still. Until this place is ready, they'll be housed very nicely there and very safely, just as Pastor Rustico said. And then with God's help, this will be open soon, this more permanent location, and we're just so excited to take this on. And again, I do wish to express my gratitude to the mayor, the Common Council, and the wardsmen for creating this opportunity for us. I thank the patience of our neighbors to make sure that we can do this task and understanding the importance of sheltering those who are least among us. And I, of course, thank God for bringing us to this opportunity. These things happen in crazy ways that we can end up here with this HUD funding and this amount given to the least among us in our society. So I just feel very, very good today and thankful that we're able to do this blessing today. Thank you.
So any questions? Anybody, Eileen, anybody online in the press that has a question? Anyone here, questions? Oh, that's always a good thing. I guess everybody must be happy, right? We plan, as I said, on implementing this as soon as possible. So when we talked with the rabbi, January is our goal, but the preliminary look at the building is we should be able to get in there fairly quickly, absent of asbestos and lead. So I just also want to acknowledge that Jerry and Andrew, they both discussed this site early on, along with other sites with us. They were working hard to look at alternate sites prior to going up to Highland Avenue, and I want to thank you for your input on this, and also the council president. We had a pretty good team effort, I think, and we're coming up with a good solution. I think the neighbors will be happy. I think the clients will be happy. They're not going to be in a basement. This is a really nice space compared to, not that the basement of the temple's not a nice space, but a basement's a basement. And but this is the old senior center. The old senior center, right? So it's being put to a good public use again. So we're off to the races, and now it's up to Maria to make sure it happens very quickly. No rush. So no rush. Thank you.